Well, we've got some more news to get to on today's show as we are back for a second Cleveland Browns report today, as the Browns made 3 roster moves going into training camp, which officially started yesterday with a bit of a walkthrough, but tomorrow, Thursday, they will leave for the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia. So we're going to break down these 3 roster moves. We're going to recap the PUP list and the NFI list that came out earlier today, and then we're going to touch on the Amari Cooper news that came out yesterday. So a lot of news to cover on today's show, which is why you got to subscribe, because training camp is here. I mean, I don't know what more news you need to see in front of you to believe that football is returning. We're going to have a lot of news coming our way. So make sure you are subscribed. Help us reach our goal of 35,000 subscribers before the end of the month. Now let's start with Jeremiah Martin, one of 2 recent additions made by the Browns. He was a UDFA last year out of Washington that actually signed with the Browns. So if the name sounds somewhat familiar to those diehards that know all 90 guys on the roster, this is one the Browns are bringing back. They liked, I guess, enough from last summer to give another opportunity to this summer. He was waived on roster cutdown day. He would go on to sign with the Giants practice squad at the end of the 2023 season, sometime in early January. They would sign him to a futures contract. They would move on from him in May, and now the Browns are bringing him back to open up training camp. Now, of course, it's an uphill battle for Jeremiah to find a spot on the 53-man roster. If we're being honest, he is likely shooting for a practice squad spot as a best-case scenario. But then again, as I say that, I remember almost to the day this time last year, who remembers when the Browns signed a guy named Austin Watkins as the final member of the 90-man roster going to the Greenbrier Resort, and he would end up being our preseason prince. But when I look at the signing, the only thing that really comes to mind is the position. The Browns are always looking to add to their cornerstone groups: edge rusher, offensive tackle, cornerback. Those are positions and wide receiver that you just see the Browns continue to add to over and over and over again. So hopefully this is not a sign of, the Browns are a little bit banged up at defensive end, which I think that's a reason why they signed the next player we're going to look at. And they just want to add some more depth at that quality position. But if you're looking at these names thinking these guys don't matter, well, you might have said that last year about Austin Watkins, and ultimately he did not make a big impact at all in the regular season, but he did provide us with some good entertainment during the Hall of Fame game and the preseason. Now, the next player we're going to look at is offensive tackle Chim Okorafor. He was a UDFA last year out of Benedict, initially signed with the Eagles. He would also go on to join the Vikings practice squad for a stretch. Now, this past spring, he was with the Michigan Panthers out of the UFL. After sitting on the bench to open up the season, his number was called, and he would start the last couple of games for them at left tackle. So we're once again seeing the NFL pool dip into the UFL pool, try and bring in some guys that have some experience from the spring and kind of keep that momentum going into the fall. Offensive line, like the defensive line, is very crowded, and unfortunately for Chim, this is just not a roster you want to be on if you're looking to be an offensive tackle to steal a roster spot. The Browns have 3 starting caliber players in Jed Wills, Jack Conklin, and DeJuan Jones. They signed players like Akeem Adeniji. They've got James Hudson on the last year of his deal. They added Jermaine Ifedi during the offseason. It's a pretty stacked room, but as we look at the Browns' offensive line, well, Jed Wills and Jack Conklin start the year off on, or at least start training camp off on the PUP list, which, by the way, we went over the PUP list in much greater detail on the video we put out earlier today. This is the thumbnail for it, so if you want some more in-depth breakdown and analysis of the Browns' injury news and lists going into training camp, I suggest you go watch this video after this one is over, because I'm not going to repeat myself word for word, but when you look at the Browns' PUP list, you've got 2 offensive tackles on it, so while those guys do count towards the 90-man roster, they are unable to participate in any sort of team practice until they pass a physical and get activated off the active PUP list. So the Browns are a little bit shorthanded, so sure, they add an offensive tackle at that spot to just help keep the drills moving along until they get Conklin and Wills back. So that's my analysis and takeaway from the offensive tackle signing. They also moved on from linebacker Caleb Johnson. He was with the team last year, if I remember correctly. Anywho, the Browns linebacker room, it's pretty skinny altogether, and I think that's going to be a reflection of for what to come, which is not a lot of 3 linebacker sets. I think you're going to see Jim Schwartz really lean into 2 linebackers, 3 safeties, and that's going to be the base defense for this Cleveland Browns. Now, the other news that came in yesterday was Amari Cooper. So, quickly, if you missed it, I'll rehash it for you guys. Him and the team agreed to terms on a new restructured contract. In this new restructured contract, he can earn up to an additional $5 million in incentives on top of his already scheduled $20 million in base salary, which, by the way, became fully guaranteed. So now Cooper has the ability to walk away with $25-ish million this season. That would put him in the top 10 for average annual salary amongst all wide receivers. But if those guys hit their incentives, that obviously increases their earnings as well. Now, one thing I do want people to note is this is a restructured deal. This is not an extension. Amari Cooper is still going to be a free agent after the 2024 season. Now, I don't think this restructured deal eliminates the possibility of an extension mid-season, although I think the Browns walk away from this deal with, a bigger grin on their face maybe, as they probably got their way more than Cooper got his way. Sure, Amari Cooper gets some more cash, and ultimately that's awesome, but the Browns avoid giving an extension to a 30-year-old wide receiver, which I think was the plan all along for the team. So, once again, Andrew Berry and the Browns, I would say when it comes to these contract negotiations and stalemates, they've kind of gotten their way more times than not. Remember when Kareem Hunt requested a trade? How did that go? He ended up staying with the Browns. How about David Njoku? He's a guy that got a nice extension from the Browns, and ultimately the Browns continue to wheel and deal in their specific manner. Now, before we let you guys go and on with the rest of your day for a second time today, I know I've said it a lot, but just in case people are tuning in for the first time with training camp underway now, we're going to do a Browns Report channel meet and greet Thursday, August 1st, 12 p.m. Eastern at Masthead Brewing Company in downtown Cleveland. So come hang out, talk brownies, grab a bite to eat, get something to drink. We'd love to see all of our awesome viewers in person. All right, if you want more Browns content, though, as training camp's about to get underway, check me out on Twitter at Matthew Petey. I'll be posting highlights from practices and whatnot, so it's a great way to stay even in the know even more when it comes to training camp, because it can be so fast-moving as we go from day to day. So make sure you check me out on Twitter at Matthew Petey on X. All right, I've got an opportunity to go 2 for 2 today. If you missed it, 8 of diamonds for the win in our first video on the Cleveland Browns Report for Wednesday, July 24th. Back with producer Reed again. Reed, which card do you want to go with?
Let's go with Ace of Hearts.
Ace of Hearts?
Yep.
All right. I got 8 of diamonds 45 minutes ago. I'm going to go with 9 of diamonds. I feel like I just got to go upstairs. All right, here we go. No. 3 of clubs. 3 of clubs. All right, that will do it for us on today's show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you later.